So why do we need a desktop inside a desktop? I mean, this is the first question, and the answer is actually, it's a good one, but we do it all the times. We do it, for example, if you use Photoshop, if you use any kind of development environment, you know, pick Unity, Unreal, all of those, you know, those also have boxes and patches, so they're just to bring that up again. And if you look at stuff like, for example, the Gmail page in Facebook, it's actually quite a bunch of windows, really. Some of them floating windows. And I don't know if you knew that, but actually in Gmail, you have a floating keyboard that you can bring up. But yes, some of that stuff is docked, but some of that stuff is not docked. So we kind of use Windows systems and this kind of stuff quite often. Facebook page, same thing. So it's a valid question, but we do use this stuff. And when do we use it? Well, we use it when a good idea is when there are many use cases. At some point, you sort of need to float them about, to dock them, or sort of bring them up and down in menus, and you have many of those. Or when you have many use cases connected together, and you're sort of bringing them together in sort of unified space, and you want to create workflows. So that's also when it comes up. So this is most similar, I think, if you want a trampoline into this. This is sort of a simplified version of something like Lively kernel, for example. And but I see some people nodding. You know about that one too. Something like Lively kernel or Squeak.js, or I believe Craig Latta is in the group as well. He made Caffeine. I think he published it in the group as well. So it's sort of all alternate versions of this kind of thing. So this doesn't necessarily claim to be the future of anything. Some kind of re-implementation and inevitable sort of slight different version of the past, really, or something that already exists. But anyways, I should also qualify. I mean, several people touched into that. For example, you know, should we empower mobile phones, for example? So this project in particular doesn't speak to that. It's just not workable with what I made here. But yeah, it's a good point. So it goes against a few key trends that are happening. This is not speaking to VR, to 3D, to any kind of Z space and this and that. And I happen to work in VR actually, but unrelated stuff, collaborative VR stuff, but yeah, not this. So how about I just do a little bit of, so why do we need another of these systems then? There is already Lively kernel, Squeak.js, Caffeine, and in Squeak.js you can run a bunch of stuff. You can run Faro, which is a fully fleshed out system that is fully used in the industry. So this stuff exists, it's done. This is just smaller, it's somewhat more compact. So it's easier for 1 or 2 people to make because this comes from the effort of 2 people, basically. So there is some element of compactness to it. This is smaller than what the Google page was yesterday. This is 320 kilobytes without the sources. This thing actually downloads its own sources, but that's besides the point. I mean, it doesn't need to do that. It just does it now, but it's still very compact. So yes, how about I show you just some flows that speak to some of the things that you talked about today. Now, there are a few things here that look like applications, but they're not actually applications. So they're more like objects that enrich themselves with ways of doing things. So let's say this is a dashboard, the slides maker. We have a clock here. That's what's the analogous of forking the clock. So we have a duplicate here. What's behind this, by the way, is a system that most likely you have heard of that is called Morphic. It's got quite a pedigree, comes from Maloney, Self, and all that. So it's a well-known thing, isn't it? Yeah. That's right. So just Monique, yes, it's built extensively on that. There is, if you're interested, there is a delta about what changed from that. There is something like a raster here thing. And if you drop stuff into it, you just take a screenshot. So you sort of there is an element of citizenship of these widgets that really try hard to cooperate. It also makes these widgets quite monstrous in size, which with today's PCs we don't have to worry about. But there is quite a complex citizenship to these things. So speaking to about, so let's say, so why does it download its own sources? Because it's meant to be dynamic. So I'm not sure what I should touch here. Let's touch that. So in this case, this is picked from, well, that's quite an elaborate way to pick a color really for a tool. But you know, just to show off a little bit of something that is root. Yeah, because the original one, let's see if it starts as the original. Yes, let's say, yeah, because you see that's the toothpaste is just, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I switched. All right, so let's save this for no reason. Okay, well, so we got raster, and then when we want to get rid of all the editing paraphernalia here, we click the pencil and we got the thing. So this looks like an image, but it brings with it as well all the, so in good object-oriented fashion, so it brings with it all the stuff that we need to edit that as well. And there is also this concept, basically, that windows are also cards in the sense of what cards are often now in web interfaces and mobile. There is stuff that is within other stuff. So it would be very annoying if it started moving around windows and they dropped inside other things. But if I click this button here, I can actually, so let me make this one a bit bigger. I can actually bring this one here, and it's now part of the dashboard. So let's say that actually maybe the presentation is a better place to put it. We're going to put it here. And by the way, there is actually little about these objects that is about being specifically a presentation or specifically a dashboard. I can pick up an element from here and put it there, and vice versa. I can, in fact, many of these elements are sort of the same. I can drop them in other places. I just want to do this. So it's now rastered. Anyways, very good. There was a clock here. Let's go into another sort of type of mode. So this is the editor, and you can drop stuff inside the editor. So if you want to pop out this card, it becomes a window, and now you can drop it. Well, you need to make it a card again. So there is a little bit of UI to get used to. But okay, you can drop it here, and you can center it, and this one now becomes a document. So these are some of the modes. Not really modes. That's in UI, sort of frowned upon. But let's look at the boxes and connectors. Well, what do you want me to show? Is the boxes a connector, except it doesn't show the boxes and the connectors. How about that? So it's basically, you have to actually go through, pain your way through the connecting of stuff. And there you go, you got that. And now you say, well, big deal. Well, yes, this is not much of it. I mean, patch programming is probably actually one of the first types of programming, isn't it? But but there is a bit of a benchmark, though. What? Didn't get that. Ah, you wanted it. Yes, yeah, okay, now you get it. Yes. So yeah, that's a phase, and basically you get these kinds of stuff, and this has been done since quite a while. And yeah, the only thing is that, you know, not always you take max MSP, and you know, sometimes it's not clear whether you really want to connect stuff all around, but there are ways around it. You can either stop calculating as you force sort of you force the component to only fire once, for example. That's a way of doing it. There's another one that says, okay, well, if you get back in the input what you already have, then you stop calculating stuff. So there are a couple of ways of doing that. Yes, that's right. So this one is, because then you get this kind of, yeah, I mean, again, it's big deal. And I guess, what if we change this? Did it do anything? Okay, I guess I need to, well, it could be done better. Actually, there is a way. I should do it. Anyways, right now you change the formula, you need to tweak all the others, but it's not meant to, it's not necessarily that way, just an oversight. Okay, so we got that. Another piece that I think it is of some interest, and again, it borrows heavily from Smalltalk, and in fact, the inspector is also in Morphic.js. You can inspect anything, and you can either inspect the object or you can inspect the class. And if you inspect the class and you change it, then all the instances are sort of repainted to some degree. They're sort of rebrought. And so you get the demo that usually people much more important than me do when they show these kind of systems is they make the clock go backwards. Let's see if this is the way of doing it. It is. There you go. You get it. So, well, and you can keep doing this. You can put a presentation inside a presentation, and this kind of stuff. You cannot quite duplicate the world itself. So there are a couple of tweaks. In better systems you can do that stuff, but this is also meant to be somewhat more compact. All right, and I think I'm coming to a close, but to me the interest of these systems is to do in a compact way. If you allow me to push this into a dramatic way, it's a little bit like having Microsoft Office and a bit of development tools and a bit of Max MSP all in a system that is 320 kilobytes, which to me is interesting. It's just interesting. And I did a little bit of paid work on this. It's not an easy sell because you have to go through the whole, why another framework? Why do I need this? Does it work on mobile? No. And so it goes against a few of the trends that are actually, what pay. But yeah, I think we'll open to questions, and then if you want more demos. Sure. I'm sorry. Should I just show the thing that is potentially the most, because making a clock go backwards is it's not quite, but maybe a dashboard where you connect stuff. You could have a database here connected to this graph. So that's slightly more interesting. The fact that you can cobble together this stuff with a direct manipulation, I think that's the closest thing to something that might be of direct interest to someone who has real problems in the industry. I mean, somehow, yeah, that's it. Yes, so these things suffer from that because they're residential systems and they end up being walled gardens where it's difficult to, yeah, and there is a problem of citizenship. Like you cannot just drop Google Maps in here. Like it doesn't work. Lively kernel does it better. I think it's much more promiscuous. I don't know how they get away with it, but they can get a lot of stuff in there. But well, you need to adapt your way into that. So by the way, big piece missing here is spreadsheets, which I don't know if by chance or one way or the other also were a weak point of initial Smalltalk systems. They missed that part out. But what I would do is I would have an entirely separate system that is represented as a database icon, and you can connect that to, say, in some form. Maybe you select a column and you put that inside. Um, you connect it to a graph. But there are to be determined, basically. Yeah, it depends. Yes, maybe. Sure. Yes. No, but I have traits in here. Yes. Yes, which it is it is actually it is CoffeeScript. I didn't mention that. Just but yeah, it looks a bit more like Python, which I like a bit better. But and traits are not shown here. You know, I should have a way here to say, okay, what else went into this? But you know, it takes time. And of course not. No, but no, I'm saying no, but and you prompt me to something that might be of interest to you. Actually, in this system, you get to control quite deep because it's not using DOM. It's actually going down at the canvas level, and it's related to your question because it's supposed to make it easier to actually synchronize just a canvas across people and the mouse cursor, assuming that you ignore that everybody is going towards touch, which opens a tremendous, you know, imagine just stretching a window with 4 touches. I mean, just imagine handling that. But um, someone suggested to me that could be something of interest. Yes, it is. Yeah, sure. Um, so motivation just being inspired by the system I mentioned, Squeak and Lively Next, Lively Kernel, and I think I just felt my way through it. Um, yes, you know, but some of the ideas have been there. You know, the idea that something like an image should carry with it a way to edit itself, so that it's already in place. You don't need to drag it into another place, some sort of thing. You know, those are classics from Smalltalk, and so I don't know, just try to feel my way through it. And Morphic.js, you know, is not too dissimilar. I have more. You see, for example, uh, now there are quite a few different. If you're interested, there is a whole difference file, but you see, it's not miles away really. And you do have a sort of different style of inspectors. So the trampoline was already there. It wasn't completely anything else. Yeah. So the community. So there's plenty of social media, but you know, some interest when I talk directly to people. Uh, but yeah, I cannot speak about a community per se. Like no, honestly, no. And killer use cases, the one that I see most practical is the putting together of dashboards. I don't think people need another editor, but I think they might need a flexible way to try new dashboards quickly, trying to mingle with different sources of data. Yeah, that could be a venue, or the synchronization across. If you have two browsers where you don't need to install anything, that could be interesting. Uh, you know, just forgetting about the fact that Google already have presentations and Excel and all that, but uh, it could be interesting. Huh? It, yeah, yeah. But thanks for that, I guess. Sure. No, and you cannot drag like slides inside the document. Is that what you mean? Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes. But well, anyways, well, there are some dark corners that I'm not gonna give out. But you know, if you go into the, oh, by the way, yes, just briefly, that's it. If you go on the side, you know, if one thing I did well is documentation. So there is quite a few explanations here. There is, you know, you know, the differences with Smalltalk and the differences with Morphic.js. It's, you know, it's all here. It's fairly well documented. There is some stuff. And as I said, an abundance of social media if you want to get in touch. You find this useful. You find this commercially viable. Then, yeah, get in touch. Sure. You can have two links to the same morph, but you can duplicate them, but you can, or you can have two morphs. Okay, you can have two text boxes, say, that they are connected cyclically. So you touch one, and the other is sort of like having two views without having. Yes, yes, right. Yeah. But you know, can you really tell apart two things that are almost the same and just? I don't know. So I don't know. We need to look at the. Sure, sure. Cool. Thank you. Thanks. Well,
Brittany Mike, the guy called it. That's a lot of resolution. With that speaker. Apparently there's sound coming through the HDMI, so I'm going to try that. Oh, cool. And then if not, then yeah, we can. Or maybe that is how it's going to get to there. So I'm going to try this. I will try and make noise, yes. What am I going to play though? Yeah, but when you do that, when you've got a HDMI audio device, it disables the system volume thing. Been there before, Steve. Been there before. Let's just try. Forgive me if this is randomly really loud. It's nothing so far. Uh, oh god, that looks like. Oh, I have this really wicked. I haven't shown that to anyone yet, but I'm so happy about that. Yeah, you should be able to, right? Maybe that's why. Sorry, I didn't do a sound check, so. Sorry. Yeah, when it goes over the edge, it does that. This is what my talk's actually about. Yeah. It's, yeah. Yeah, this is the talk's called Pimp My Editor. Sorry, that's not doing anything. Right, yeah. Absolutely. Okay, let's start again. That's comfortable, right? Yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna just I don't know what's going on. Is the guy doing stuff back? Yeah. Did you do anything? No. Okay, that's all I need to know. Right. So I'm just gonna play for like 5-10 minutes and then talk a little bit about the world that this exists in, because it's, believe it or not, it's not just me doing this. And then see where it goes. But yeah, this sounds like the sample rate just changed. I wonder why. I have no idea. Let's just assume that it's now the right sample rate. Before it was incorrect. Very difficult to All right, so that was my introduction to Haskell. Actually, it's the first time I ever used Haskell or any sort of function program. Use this thing. So this is so I'll explain a bit about this system and then talk a bit more about other systems in this world. So this is an embedded DSL inside Haskell, which is called TidalCycles. It's actually, if you look at the most downloaded Haskell packages in package, whatever it's called, you will see Tidal's actually up there in the top 10, I think, which is quite interesting. But the idea of this language is that it's a pattern language. So if I just make I set the template to 0, so that wasn't. Yeah, so I'm just inside text files. So that's the basic pattern of a bass drum, and you kind of have this syntax or this like mini notation language inside strings in this world. But the really cool thing about this is that you can do stuff that's very difficult to do in your digital audio workstation software. Like I can subdivide time by very arbitrary amounts using this kind of brackets notation. This is based on a piece of research by a guy called something Ball, and it's looking at how to notate like Indian. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Yeah. I can go Brittany now. Hello. Wow. Yeah, so, wow, that's quite loud, sorry. Oh my god. So inflexible. Okay, is that a good volume? So this notation syntax is based on a study about notating traditional Indian percussion. And it's by a guy called Ball, and that project was called the Ball Processor. And that found its way in as a inspiration for Tidal. And the idea of Tidal is that everything is in a cycle. Right? So the unit of like the concept basically is the idea of a cycle. So as I add more events to this cycle, the cycle itself remains the same overall duration, and then it's dividing everything that inside it to fit that space. And so in doing that, I can, you can do a lot of really great stuff inside this syntax, but then also because it is Haskell, wow, for demos, this highlighter thing's really not that great, is it? So that's a run of 8 numbers that is sampling from this arpeggiator sound, or I could, because there's a folder full of samples that are, sorry, I don't know who asked the question, but so like if I run that function here, that's the output of this function. So it's the numbers 0 to 7 split across a cycle. Yeah, it's just that's just Haskell. Yeah, so I can do. I actually have a shorthand for that. Run inverse. Ooh, spooky. Or I could do a run of even numbers. It's like a whole tone scale. Music notes. Yeah. So then there's all these. Yes, now they are, yeah. But if I wanted to, I could clamp that to a major scale. And then I could make that alternate between major and minor across 2 cycles. Oops, if I type it properly. Minor. Major. Ooh. Yeah. So. Yeah. Now it's so. I'm going to explain this really badly, but the $sign is essentially like a way of not having to write parentheses. So this, to me, is as a live coder. It's a user interface function that prevents me from needing to do that ad infinitum, which means that it's very easy for me to edit this code without having to restructure it. But it's a, what is it? The actual there's a whole jargon. The fun thing about this is that I don't know Haskell at all. I just write. I'm very good at Tidal, but I suck at Haskell. Right. So everything on this side is passed to D1, and D1 is essentially a channel in my synthesizer, which is SuperCollider running in the background. So yeah, and then SuperCollider is outputting multi-channel audio to Logic so that I can have fancy plugins. Yeah. How are we doing time? Okay. So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of generally show that you can then, because we're just dealing with lists of numbers, essentially, you can do all sorts of really fun things. So there's lots of really fun functions inside Tidal for doing just that. So iter will rotate a pattern. So every, depending on the parameter that's passed to it, it will rotate so that the starting point of the pattern moves by 1/4 cycles each time. There is a function called striate, which is kind of like a granular synthesizer. And that will chop each sample up into, in this case, 8 parts, and then it will kind of look at the whole sequence, and it will sequence the first 1/8 chunk of each sample and put them together. So in the first thing that you hear is the first part of each note, and then the second thing that you hear is the second 1/8 of each note, and so on until it plays over the whole sample. So if I replace this with like Elton John. you're suddenly in a world of like complete abstract sound design, which is really fun considering that we're doing this all from the pattern generation side, and I've not built a fancy synthesizer to make this noise that we're hearing at the moment. Just to prove that that is Sir Elton. Oh, that's another plugin. This is back into the Pimp My Editor talk. Yeah, and I use comments a lot as like a kind of musical score type thing. So I have multi-line editing is very important as well, and so on. I don't think I have that many other interesting editor tricks going on. Yeah, so Tidal's probably the most popular kind of live coding language at the minute, but there's lots of others. And so I'll just quickly give an overview of the live coding community, and then I'll stop. Sorry? A lot of live coding languages use SuperCollider as a backend engine, just because it's quite. Yeah, so come to that. So yeah, in terms of a community, so TopLap is kind of the hub, and it recently celebrated its 15th birthday in February, and to celebrate this, there was where is it? Is that here? Yeah. There was a weekend-long live streaming extravaganza that covered pretty much the whole world. So it's quite a big community. Yeah, worldwide non-stop stream of around 168 performances over 84 hours from the 14th to the 17th of February. So yeah, this is where you can find a sort of index of environments and systems, and also this is kind of like the blog front page. So yeah, I'll just show two examples of current things that I think are really cool. This is a live coding tool called Hydra, which is based on, it's basically trying to turn GLSL into an analog video synth. So these are kind of like chained JavaScript functions, but they refer to things that you might find in a 1980s video synth. But yeah, it's just so fun to do stuff like this with a tiny bit of code. Yeah. Really lovely. And yeah, one that was mentioned earlier was a guy called Charlie Roberts, who developed something called Jibber, which also runs in the browser, but they've connected it to the Ableton Live DAW, and but the interesting thing for you guys maybe is this system of like live kind of annotation of like program state overlaid onto the code. So you've got little drum machines here and sequences alternating, and then you've got these mini inline kind of sparkline oscilloscopes or something. I don't know what the term might be for that. So yeah, I would suffice it to say that there's lots of really cool innovations happening in this world that you might be interested in. If you want to go and see a live show, there is something called Algo Rave, which is tongue-in-cheek. It's not meant to be serious, but people do this on stage. Upcoming, there is the Festival of Algorithmic and Mechanical Movement in Sheffield, which is always really good. That's organized by Alex McLean, who created the Tidal language that I use. And on the 20th of June, there will be an Algo Rave in London at Corsica Studios, which is a really quite prestigious nightclub. That will be quite fun. I'll hopefully be playing there. Algo Rave is kind of this thing that was a joke, and now it's kind of massive, and then all the media come to people in Algo Rave and like, is this the future of music, man? And everyone has to be like, no, we're just having fun. So there's a panel or like an event and all sorts of stuff going on at South by Southwest this year with Algo Rave people involved, which is fun. Hey, look. Yeah. My only comment on the box and wires thing is I would love to leave it behind, but there's so many systems that I rely on, that like Pure Data and so on, that are still in that world. So as much as I would like to have a phase, I'm kind of stuck with some of this stuff. So please help me. There is a conference called ICLC. It just had its 4th edition in Madrid at the Media Lab Prado, and the next one is in Limerick. And yeah, if you're developing things that you feel the mainstream academic CS community might not see the point of, then submit to this instead, because it's way more fun. There's also this workshop called FARM, Functional Art, Music Modeling and Design, which is a good venue for this sort of stuff. Worth checking out. It's usually co-located with the Functional Programming Conference, I think. And oh yeah, I just wanted to finally plug / offer this project to you that I never finished, called the Stenophone. So obviously you can see me struggling with manipulating text at a musical speed, which is part of the whole joke, I guess. But I had this idea of like, okay, how would you speed up live coding and make it more musical speed? So does anyone know what this thing is? Yeah, it's a stenotype. So a stenotype is a chorded keyboard with 22 keys, and you write in chords rather than letters. So you hit all the keys at once to do a phonetic, mnemonic, remembered word, compressed version of that word, and then executes the whole word. But the point is, you can type at over 300 words per minute on these things, which is faster than a lot of human speech, which is pretty cool. And you eliminate spelling errors within words because the whole word is sort of executed at the same time. So I was like, wow, that could be really fun for live coding. And then I bought this thing off eBay for £6 and put some sensors in it so that I could detect the key heights. And then I got this continuous data out of it, and I was like, oh my God, I don't even need key presses anymore. I can just like, use this like gestural data instead. And then I was like, okay, well, how do you actually do programming with continuous data rather than discrete key switches? And I have not found the answer to that question. So you guys need to help me out and help figure that out. But I just had this idea of like having a sort of hybrid editor where you could have kind of inlined representations of these continuous elements, where like rather than typing the name of a function and then a list of parameters, I could sort of use the chord for that function, and then the way that I do it generates the data that parameterizes the algorithm or something. I don't know. Yeah, just garbage really, because but Yes. Okay. Yeah. I had to kind of abandon this project and get on with my life, but I would love to, see what your responses to this thing might be. Anyway, I've talked too long now, so do you have any questions?
Sorry to interrupt. I found a microphone for the questions, and also apparently they want to lock the fridge for the beer. So if anyone wants a beer, I would grab one now.
I do. Yeah, let's just grab all of them. Oh no, you can still hear me.
Yeah, so I think it's fantastic because, we spend a lot of time in this group talking about like, oh, how can we move beyond text as to a visual representation? And you're taking a form that is usually done in a visual or kinesthetic representation and putting it back to text. And so I don't know what to make of it, just that like there's interesting potential there. But it's also interesting that this is maybe one of the few types of music where very much focusing on exactly what you're doing is part of the performance. Like do you see that as an essential part of it, or?
Do you mean in terms of like you're directly interacting with the output of the code as it's happening?
I guess I mean as a performance, like most musical performances you go to, you might be able to kind of see that they're messing with a guitar or a keyboard, but it's not zoomed in so you could see precisely what they were doing. And I guess, so I was wondering about like the fact that you can see it, but also the fact that it's a sort of very cryptic representation for anyone but someone who's well versed in Tidal.
Right. Yeah. No, I think so there's originally there was kind of like this manifesto about live coding in this musical sense, and the idea was like show us your screens as a way of sort of it kind of has that dual purpose of like it's opening up to the crowd what you're doing on your laptop, because you might be just reading email or something. But then also there's if you are literate in the thing that's being used, then you can go deeper into it. But I think it also it kind of works on both levels. Like it's a gesture to the audience in the same way that if you played the guitar behind a curtain, it wouldn't be the same type of experience, and it wouldn't necessarily be the audience and the performer connecting in the same way. So that's some people think this is almost like dogmatic now, like projecting the code as this kind of like bit of dogma. But I think it's nice, and it's not. Some people see it and they think, oh god, this is so complex and I can't understand it, and it's kind of off-putting for some people. Some people just don't give a shit, which is fine as well. But yeah, no, it's meant to be a sort of gesture of openness. Yeah.
So you mentioned just now that you would like to leave boxes and wires in the past, and I'd just like to know why a bit. It's interesting to note things like, this is just open-ended text, but you have plugins like increase number by 1 and presumably decrease number by 1, because to some extent you want like semantically appropriate manipulations. And I was just wondering what your feelings are about how you're moving between kind of different representational layers and accessing this, and
I mean,
shortcuts and plugins.
Yeah, that's really the problem, is that I think before I started doing this, I didn't realize text would be so good compared to everything else. And then I was like, oh my god, this is so much better than any other user interface for sort of, it works at all levels because the fundamental representation is so simple, but obviously it's not self-aware in any respect. So I've got these like silly little hacks about increasing and decreasing numbers, but ideally, I really see a need to reinvent the physical interface first, rather than the kind of the visual representation. And if you can go from a starting point of having a lot of sort of gestural data coming into the system, not just random stuff like hand waving with a Connect or something, but something that's like meaningful in a tactile way, coming into the system, and then design the language and the representations around that. That's kind of the approach that I see having the greatest departure from this like local maxima idea. Because you could just keep extending this with like, oh, I'll have a slider next to my little number and so on. But do we want to be that incremental? But having said that, I'm a complete hypocrite, because I love finding these weird little Emacs files on the internet that people dumped 20 years ago, and I can like put it in my editor, and I'm like, yes, I can change that number slightly faster now. Yeah. So yeah, all of the above.
I don't know who is next.
Just really quickly, so I don't know much about the music community in this space, but I'm just wondering, is there like a instrument kind of thing where you'd be interested in taking like a physical device that has some range and some variance, like like an electric guitar type thing or something like that, and then plug that back into a symbolic medium, and then that way you start getting this different kind of music
kind of
expression?
a feedback loop between.
Yeah.
So that in the new version of Tidal, which I've not really explored this so far, but you can replace numbers with like OSC, open sound control values. So open sound control is like a protocol based on Ethernet for exchanging random data. That's kind of like, we're supposed to overtake MIDI, but it never really happened. But yeah, so you can every number here, I could replace its representation with a physical thing, and I think that's a really important gateway drug. And then the question is, okay, so we can manipulate the data, but can we manipulate the structure of the program in a tactile way as well? And then maybe we need to like do blocks and wires again, but in the physical world, and it'll be some kind of like, I don't know, like something softer than Lego that can kind of like, be physically reconfigured in a very easy way. I don't know. Interested in people's thoughts on that.
So I know that Tidal has been a thing for like a few years now, and the live coding community kind of became bigger. So I'm just wondering how things have progressed since like a few years ago, and like what people are interested now that they weren't a few years back, and like what's the future of all these kind of, or is it just like pretty much the same?
I think the thing is about this like live coding community is that it's the vast majority is users, and there's only a few systems developers. So the development's actually probably similar speed to what you are familiar with. So to me, it couldn't evolve fast enough, really. I think the thing that's really successful about it is the fact that in terms of like the diversity and inclusion aspect of this community, that's where it's grown and matured the most, actually. Is like, you can go to an algo rave in whatever country, and there'll be a code of conduct, and there'll be like, actual women on the lineup. Steve, you can work on that, mate. So I think that's where it's matured the most recently. But in terms of like technical research, it's actually not really gone forward at all, I would say. And the funding's probably an issue there.
So I'm super interested and super fascinated by the aspect of symbolic representation and doing live coding in that environment. And so initially I thought, when I ask you this question, it's going to be easy, but it's actually going to be pretty hard, because you also demonstrated that you are not 100% into this text thing, because you have some plugins installed and make direct manipulation somehow possible for at least some of those things.
Mm.
And then you're also presented this other project that we're working on, where you're
Yeah.
trying to replace this with a different input mechanism. So what I'm really interested in is there must be something with the text representation that you don't get. I mean, there's a reason why you're not standing there and just putting up Ableton Live or whatever and just like playing with some like MIDI interfaces or whatever. What is it that you think the text interface or the symbolic representation brings to the table that you cannot get in this, from my point of view, pretty well thought out direct manipulation interface that we already have in the domain of music?
Yeah, I think, well, it really just comes down to structure and the malleability of structure. So if I go and look at this, if we're looking at a grid here fundamentally, and did that just, no, okay. If I want to have a bar of 3 followed by a bar of 7 followed by a bar of 5 followed by a bar of x times y minus z from 5 cycles ago, like no chance, absolutely no chance. I'll be here for weeks, and that's the area of musical possibility that I personally aesthetically wanted to explore, and found that this was it's very good at what it does, but it only does this one paradigm, and I can't share audio between these channels in a simple, easy way. I can't abstract over the MIDI patterns and establish relationships between them. I can't transform patterns algorithmically. So yeah, it's just, I guess it's just the expressive power of a functional language really lends itself so well to music, because music is just, in many ways, it can be described in these kind of very simple mathematical patterns, and this is a much more ideal way of manipulating those. But it's push and pull, because I'd love to have a bidirectional editor that's half piano roll, half text, right? Because that would be great, because I learned music by notating ringtones into a Nokia, like G32, A16 or whatever. So this kind of works for me, but for most people it just doesn't. It's not a musical way of thinking about writing a melody like this. So that's the sacrifice. It would be much better if this was a bidirectional editor where I had the algorithmic expression and the direct expression, but we don't have that right now. So I'm not a purist on either side. I'm promiscuous was the word that was used earlier.
How learnable is this? Like, do you have to be like really good with one of the musical instruments before you start with this, or is this something someone can actually experiment with?
I would say,
To extend that, how do I learn to do this?
yeah. So the easiest way to learn how to do this is, well, you're all software nerds, so you don't have problems with the installation part, I would assume. But the best thing to do is to search GitHub for Tidal code and try and run it and read it and see what it does. And then also you can come down to Music Hackspace, which is located at Somerset House. And there's a regular Tidal workshop meetup where people come and learn things and do demos and build synths and other stuff. But there's a Tidal meetup at Somerset House every month that you're definitely welcome to come and join. There's so much instant gratification that it becomes very addictive very quickly, because even you try and type out your favorite song and like 20 different things will happen. You have no idea what's going on, but it's like, wow, it's amazing. And musical debugging is just fascinating, because like you start to perceive bugs in the music, and then you're like, why is that chord there when it should be there, and it's just I think you just dive in and you'll answer that question quite easily. I think if you already are quite interested in music, I think that most people don't have musical backgrounds necessarily that work with this stuff as well. So it's not like you need a music degree to do it.
I hope you'll share the link somewhere.
Yeah, we can do it. I'll do a link dump on the Slack maybe.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah. Sorry? Oh yeah, yeah. I should show you. Oh man. So this is another mini language that's doing the rounds at the minute called Orca, and basically it's 2D text, and there's an alphabet of functions, right? So it's like Game of Life meets like the Matrix or something. Yeah, right. Literally. So, but if you, but so a tracker. Does everyone know what a musical tracker is? Tracker software. It's like the kind of peak pre-DAW kind of music programming software. So you'll probably maybe recognize it when I show you these pictures. So it's like a spreadsheet as a musical score essentially, but people have got very virtuosic at these in the 90s. If you're interested in this kind of thing, Chris Nash is a researcher who's done studies about virtuosic tracker users, and it's amazing. But so this language is good enough that you can implement a tracker inside it, which I think is really wonderful and like really expresses the whole point of like creating languages. But like some of this stuff is just madness, absolutely madness. It's incredible. So that's a program just doing its thing. Yeah, I don't know what font they're using there. Yeah, the people that make this like live on a boat. Go figure.
I was just gonna ask about bugs or like unintentional things.
Mm.
So like I guess just as an example, while you were just performing a bit ago,
Yeah.
did anything happen that you didn't intend? And like what did you roll with it or mistake?
When I in the live coding world, there's kind of like the two extremes are you do blank slate programming with no plan, or you do like you run through compositions. I'm much more on this side, but there is a very strong crowd in the improv side, and that's where you're more likely to find bugs. For me, when I'm composing is when I find them. But a really interesting one that I'll mention is that there was a really minor release of Tidal that had a bug where if you had you had a pattern that had notes in it and you used a negative number, so say like -5, this bug would treat that as a Haskell list like that, which means it would output 3, 4, 5. And I had this track that had these very large intervals between notes, so I would have like 12 -32 5, and then obviously hearing that would then be every single number in between 12 and -32, which because it's not like rhythmically it would also be like a bug because it's not like it's just a random number, the number of numbers between those numbers. So as well, it would be like a rhythmic bug as well. But it basically turned all my music into. So that was pretty fun. Yeah.
Does anybody use this for reproducing classical like Bach or anything like that?
Yeah, well, if you look in SuperCollider, there is people have transcribed like all kinds of stuff, like Stockhausen works and Kraftwerk. I did as a exercise once. I tried to transcribe some Beethoven into Tidal code and guitar tab as well. I was thinking to write a guitar tab parser into Tidal, but never
I
mind.
was thinking mostly of Bach because he was a very mathematical composer.
Yeah. Where is it? Okay, so well, this is Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, second movement, opening motif. Oh gosh, this isn't. I don't even know if this will work in this version of Tidal, but. What's going on? Oh, there we go. Just very quiet. Hey. It's just those bars. But yeah, but the idea of doing this would then be to like write it quite manually, but then how can you extract the kind of mathematical aspects and abstract up out of the manual notation? Because and this piece is based on the rhythm of da 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 da. So can you reverse engineer that symphony to just have that as the only notated bit and do everything else as a series of algorithmic transforms?
Because I was thinking
That would
about
be cool.
a composition called the Art of Fugue,
Yeah.
which is, I think it's a very repetitive.
Yeah, and deeply
it is
mathematical.
It's algorithmic. I think,
Yeah. That would be a PhD in composition, probably. That I would love to do. So, yeah. Maybe I'll end it there, and then you can ask me other things if you like. Great, thank you. Thanks for your questions. I'll just keep playing.
Maybe now we get a picture before anyone else. Yeah.